Hey there! Thanks for listening to the Infinite Podcast, where we want to challenge the people of God to see the realities of their context and reflect on and reformulate concepts such as mission, missionary, mission field, holistic mission, and more. In this episode, we feature a recording of Ciprian Gheorge-Luca's plenary presentation from the Stott Bediako Forum on Jesus and Empire, Christian Witness in the Context of Power. Join us as we listen and learn more about Ciprian's contribution, Empowered Citizens of Heaven, Witnessing Neighbors on Earth, Rethinking Citizenship in Light of the Pentecostal Narrative. Reverend Dr. Ciprian Gheorge-Luca is a Romanian Pentecostal theologian and the senior pastor of Emmanuel Christian Center in Bucharest, Romania. He holds a degree in Pentecostal pastoral didactic theology from the University of Bucharest and has earned a PhD in Pentecostal public theology from Aurel Vlaicu University in Arad. He has held various leadership positions, both at ecclesiastical and organisational levels. Most recently, between 2015 and 2022, he has been the headmaster of Emmanuel Pentecostal Theological High School in Bucharest, where he has also taught several theological subjects. His field of research and competence is Pentecostal theology and the relationship between the church and public life. Listen and learn with us.
Because our theme here in the Stott Bediako Forum is Jesus and Empire, Christian Witness in the Context of Power, we cannot talk about power, or we cannot talk about, let's say, empire without talking about power. We cannot talk about citizenship, as we will see, not talking about empire or power. And we have to see where Jesus and where Jesus' disciples are in all of this. But this tension, I suggest that is felt all the way until today. What is our concern about the kingdoms or the kingdom or the empire? And what is Jesus's will or wish for his disciples? So in this presentation, I will try to briefly explore, first of all, the concept of citizenship in the vision of the Roman Empire, then try to explain how the Pentecost narrative challenges, contests even the narrative of the empire and the empire's vision about citizenship. How we are called to be empowered citizens, but of heaven and witnessing neighbors here on earth. I'm not interested only in the reality or historical reality or forms of the empire, but especially in what someone has called the spirit of the empire. That is, seeing what moves this conglomerate of forces that generates this particular form with its propensity for total dominion. My goal is not to look only for an imperial way of life that transcends, or it is to look at a way of life that transcends partial expressions of different historical circumstances. Because as theologians, we ought to be interested in analyzing this imperial spirit at another level, investigating what shapes character, what makes an empire what it is, what makes human beings seek, admit, or resist the imperial way, what allows us to see through still in the midst of imperial demand, there is another human way of being. And I opened up my presentation with the words of Jesus, and of course, written by the evangelist Luke here in the book of Acts, because I believe that these words are words of hope for the ones who have been caged in the grasp of empires and forbidden to dream an alternative socio-political future for the world. This is sort of a liberation manifesto of human imagination the foundation of dissident residence against the dehumanizing social deformities induced and perpetuated by imperial coercion. What we have read from the Bible, in my opinion, is the divine proclamation that all earthly empires shall come to an end, and that their projects for self-immortalization will fail in the face of an earthly advent of God's kingdom that is not of this world. The kingdom of heaven with Pentecost, or at Pentecost, looms beyond the historical horizon as the great destabilizer of imperial political power and expediency. It offers us, and this is what I'm proposing in the paper, at least it will be more clear in the written version. It offers us the lenses through which to see the present age's empire for what they truly are, unmasking their propaganda disguise. The kingdom at Pentecost brings to light the impotence of imperial promises for social salvation and unveils the self-serving theology of their political agendas. So, what do we mean by empire? Just a short introduction before we talk about citizenship, because in my opinion, as death is the sting of sin, citizenship can be sometimes the sting of empire. And you cannot talk about one without talking about the other. So just a brief introduction of what empire is, because our forum is about Jesus and empire, and I would like to offer some sort of a definition, or at least work toward a definition. The concept of empire was born and consolidated in Rome. This is why I picked the Roman Empire vision upon, or in regards to citizenship. Of course, there were expansive powers in the history of the East and West before the advent of Imperial Rome, but there is certainly a quantitative and a qualitative step or leap that differentiates the reality of the Roman Empire from the earlier forms of power. This difference lies in the convergence of two factors. On one hand, the explicit quest for totalitarian power to include the inhabited world under one unified political entity, and on the other, to achieve a conglomeration of the different components of this power in a single project. Rome constituted its republican organization with the formal controls represented by the tribunals, plebiscites, the Senate, and adapted to a situation in which the confluence of economic, military, political powers and the ideological construction of Pax Romana should be understood, I suggest both then and now, not as an institutional form of polity, but as a way of exercising power through different legalities and illegalities. Many have attempted to establish the characteristics of empire, and in my written paper, I talked about Hart and Negri's book, The Empire, very famous, very controversial as well. But there is an ecclesial document, and some of you, or many of you might be familiar with it, the World Alliance of Reformed Churches, WARC, has a document in which we are proposed the idea that, I quote, empire is the convergence of economic, political, cultural, and military interests that constitute a system of domination in which benefits flow primarily to the powerful. Centered in the last remaining superpower, yet spread all over the world, empire crosses all boundaries, reconstructs identities, subverts cultures, overcomes nations, states, and challenges religious communities, end of quote. What stands out in this definition is the idea that empire is a particular configuration of power which is characterized by the conjunction of economic power and certain political, military, and civil organizations, as well as government structures. These powers that were destined to control one another, to sustain themselves in tension, and to limit their reach through oppositions and confrontations, are now cooked by the same project or understanding power. They are jointly aligned and organized according to a single shared objective. They are fed by a common ethos and annul the validity of the powers and the emergence of different options. This occurs through the convergence of certain elites who produce practical alliances or establish power relations that allow them to relativize other concurrent powers. Although they may have some conflict and minor disagreements, they are unified by their decision to control and dominate and are in agreement on the way to do it. So the issue of citizenship with regards to the Roman Empire is related to this sort of mentality, ideology, or I would even dare say narrative. Because in the end, and this is something I'm suggesting, both empire and the kingdom of God, or the kinship of God, the kingdom of God, however you wish to call it, they are both about believing, accepting, and living out a certain narrative. The narrative of the empire or the narrative of the gospel, the narrative of Jesus. Citizenship is the sting of empire because it is one of the ways it seduces those who desire to have what empire offers or can offer. But right here and now, I want to underline the fact that everything, and I'm being harsh, everything that empire has, so-called, has to offer is false, is impotent. It might seem as being powerful, but it is truly impotent. It might seem as being life-giving, but it's actually life-consuming or life-taking. And there are a few pretenses, let me call them that way, that the empire has, and I will just briefly mention them. First, it has the false pretension that it dominates in an absolute way. It cannot dominate in an absolute way. But this false pretension is one of the things that has to be exposed. Secondly, the pretense to be eternal. And in my written version of the paper, I will talk about the empire's way of de-eschatologizing the times and politics. Because imperial ideology, or the ideology of the empire, says something like this: there can be nothing outside the empire. There can be nothing beyond the empire. All that there is the empire. And so the empire is eternal. There is no time and no life beyond the empire or without the empire. And then the third thing that the empire has to offer, now I'm coming to the issue of citizenship, is salvation. The promise of salvation, understood by many as salvation from the threats that could come upon them by invading peoples or whatever, the threats of insecurity. If we become citizens, if we become part of this huge thing that is forever and will never die, will never come to an end, then we are safe and safe. We are economically safe, we are military safe, nobody's gonna mess with us. We will have the life we want because we are part of this project. And of course, it is a false pretense because the empire cannot save anyone. Perhaps now we're starting to see how the gospel clashes, or the gospel narrative clashes with the narrative of the empire. So what is citizenship? After all this introduction about empire, what is citizenship? I said already that it is, to me, the sting of the empire. There are several components. I'm not going to enter into great detail. Different scholars, like Bellamy, for example, talk about three components of citizenship in attempting to give a definition. The first component is membership or belonging. The second component is rights, or the freedom to do certain things and enjoy certain things. And the third component is participation. Participation in decision making, participation, and this becomes this makes citizenship sort of a condition of civic equality. But the question is, how did the idea of citizenship help to extend Roman power? One of the main reasons for Rome's success in building an empire that already had a powerful army is this notion of citizenship that was given to those that accepted Roman rule. So in order to become a citizen, you have to pledge allegiance to Rome. And then Roman citizenship, must say, was based upon duties, military service, taxes, rights. It also gave rights to vote, to make contracts, to contract a legal marriage, to sue, to stand trial, not to be subject to torture or scourging. A Roman citizen could not be condemned to death unless found guilty of treason. A lot of rights that could feel or could make one feel safe. At the heart of idealized Roman conceptions of citizenship was a covenant between the individual Roman citizen and the res publica of the Roman state. And I'm saying this in sort of a summary way to conclude the section about citizenship in the Roman Empire, because I feel that this is the heart of things. This covenant, it is a covenant. And the covenant means entering into this narrative and perpetuating this narrative. Bonds of sacred obligation united one to the other and demanded unflinching loyalty and selfless devotion of an individual citizen, while promising freedom from abuse by powerful individuals, access to reason-regulated laws in which one's life, property, and liberties were to be protected. It was that compact between the individual and the state, the fate of the individual Roman and the laws of the state, and in the sacred destiny of Rome, not to the place of birth, language, or cultural background that made one Roman. So citizenship, and I have abridged the paper to just say the essential. Citizenship equals power. I hope you agree with this conclusion. Citizenship equals power. Identity, belonging is a discussion about who can be a citizen and who is excluded from being a citizen, and the introducing of two categories that contradict each other, friend and foe. So being a citizen in Rome and I have a feeling that not only in Rome, sometimes means you have to report on the neighbor that is an undocumented foreigner or alien. What a name to call another human being alien. To report activities that are suspect, and it usually leads to racial profiling and all kinds of. But because we have pledged allegiance to Rome, because we want to be what? Good citizens, we believe that we are doing the right thing. And people are duped, are seduced into this kind of narrative, and are, in the end, ready to do all kinds of crazy things, attack another country that shares the same religion or confession. But see, and you know what I'm talking about now, Russia and Ukraine. The narrative is that we are saving them from themselves. We are saving them from the decadent West. We are saving them from, but this pretense of salvation is so clearly false. Nobody saves anybody except it kills others, not saves. The rights, yes, I have protection by the Roman law. I have the freedom to travel, to study, to trade, access to public resources, lighter tax obligations. All this, if you swear that you will be loyal. And if you dare contradict Rome, you lose all this. Participation in decision making. And as I said, I'm finishing this section by pointing out that in the end, this narrative is about how the society or how the world of empire envisions common good and the future. What is the future we are building here together? What is the future this empire will grant us if we are continuing to be part of it? It's a grandiose future, a bright future, a wonderful, sparkling future. That is, if the empire doesn't collapse. But I would dare say, quoting a very, how should I say this? A favorite theologian of mine from Bulgaria, Daniela Augustin, she says, and I quote, "What we see in the present and we do not see in the vision of the kingdom," and this might be, again, about the kingdom of God and the Pentecost, "has no future. It will come to an end." What we see in the present and we don't see at Pentecost, when the kingdom is fully released, has no future. So it is a false pretense of the empire. How does the Pentecost, and I put Pentecostal in the title because I pray and hope that Pentecostals would embrace this vision, the biblical Pentecost vision. How does the Pentecost narrative, how does it contest or challenge the idea of citizenship in the Roman Empire and in all empires? I propose there are 4 things that happen both at the event and in the paradigm of Pentecost. First, the recentering of power. Second, the reframing of identity. Thirdly, the reordering of rights and participation. And fourthly, the redefining of the common and future good. If we read Acts 2, and I'm not going to preach today, but if we read Acts 2, we will see that one of the first challenges of Pentecost, or of the Pentecost narrative, on the empire narrative was the decentering of power, decentering, dislocating, displacement, dismantling, how do you want to call it? What I mean is that by what happened there at Pentecost, by what the Spirit did, enabling, empowering the disciples of Jesus to speak into every language and culture only one message about the wonderful works of God. So the languages are many, but the message is one. Is a way of recentering power. Why? Because the empire has its own prophets and priests that communicate truths about the empire. But now it's not from Rome that we are being told what is true. It's not from some place of power that we are told what the future will look like. It is from God. And this decenters the power. This, I would say, it destabilizes power. Then the reframing of identity through the same thing. Identity is not based on citizenship, as the empire would have us believe. It is based on who we are as human beings. It is based, according to the gospel narrative, on who we are to God and who God made us to be. The reordering of rights and participation, and again, redefining the common good. The time has gone, and I hope something of what I have said so far makes sense. And my desire with this paper, at least with this presentation, is not to give answers. It is to spark a deeper conversation that would help us imagine together as infants, as Christians, what our witness should look like nowadays. Because the spirit of the empire is still haunting nations and people. It's still offering a very seductive narrative in which a lot of humans buy into. Recently, and this is something to not take lightly, we can see populist, xenophobic, nationalistic ideologies coming to life more and more around us, at least here in Romania. But the funny thing is that they clothe themselves in Christian terms sometimes. And instead of presenting themselves for what they truly are, an empire ideology, they propose that they are all for the Christian traditional values, all about making together a future that is based on traditional, vision and Bible vision. And people are actually believing it. What does it look to apply this Pentecost or Pentecostal paradigm to our lives today? Thank you.
Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as we did. Please don't forget to subscribe to our channel on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or the platform you prefer. If you think this could be helpful for someone you know, please share it with them. The best compliment we can receive is a referral to someone else. See you next time!